you the recording and I will also send everyone who has registered the slides as well. Okay. All right. So first, let's go through the new rules that came out on December 19th. For the permanent residence applications. Okay, so no new permanent residence applications under the Startup Visa program will be accepted after this year for commitment certificates issued after 2025. I'm still in 2025. After December 31st, 2025, no new commitment certificates will be issued or accepted. People still have if you haven't submitted your permanent residence applications yet, you still can, as long as the commitment certificate was issued in 2025. And of course, commitment certificates, they expire after 6 months, so you have to submit your PRs within that time period. Everyone else who has already submitted your permanent residence applications, your applications are still ongoing. Okay, so don't worry if you've already submitted your PR applications, it's still there. The main thing is the work permit applications. So, with regard to work permit applications, unfortunately, as of the date that they announced it, December 19th, they are no longer accepting any work permit applications to be processed. Those are new work permit applications. If you already have a startup visa work permit, then you can still file the work permit extensions. Okay. So, what does that mean? For those people who already have the SUV work permits, these are now very, very precious. If you've already submitted the work permit applications, um, your app prior to December 19th, the applications continue on. Now, last year, the refusal rate was around 77% refusal rate for work permits. It's a unbelievable, untenable rate for refusals. And so with a lot of people, we are now in the process of doing judicial reviews. These are a lot of these concerns are things that we are trying to bring to the government and to say that this just does not make sense. I think the high rate of refusals for these work permits is indicative of the attitude that the government has about this program. And it is very much a shame, in my opinion, because if you want people to apply for the program, you allow people to apply for the program, then you cannot cut them off at the knees and say that they can't come to Canada and just force them to fail, right? Um, the third announcement is the priority hierarchy. That's what I call it. Essentially, the processing, which applications they're going to process first. So the first ones that they are going to process, and it really depends on who the designated organization was that issued the commitment certificate. So if the designated organization that issued the commitment certificate is an angel investor, VC, or for the incubators, they have to have invested at least 75,000 into the project or belong to this Canada's tech network. So if that's the case, and one of the founders holds a SUV work permit, and I think the reason why they canceled the work permits is because they didn't want a whole rush of people to apply for the work permits. Anyway, so in this situation, the top priority is those people who have a work permit, a founder who has a work permit, and the designated organization is what I call a priority designated organization. Those people will be processed first. Then it's those who don't have work permits but are from the priority designated organization. Those are second, and then everyone else on a first come, first serve basis. All right, so now we come to processing times. And this is the big question that I have been receiving a lot. Unfortunately, I can only provide estimations based on my limited ability to know what it is. Okay, none of this is set in stone. No one, I think, out there, including government officials, really know what it would be. First of all, because it depends on a few factors. And first of all, it depends on where you are on the hierarchy. If you belong to the first one, your applications will likely be processed much faster than if you belong to the third tier, right? I kind of base my estimations on also two things, and it's pure math. How many applications the government said that they're going to process every year? So the current immigration levels plan is approximately 2,000 a year for the business immigration. Now, the business immigration includes startup visas, which I think take up the majority, but there are some of the self-employed applicants that are still left in there. Okay. And I say 2,000 because that was the high end. They said their target is 1,000. So I take the high end because I think they're going to process it, but they're going to reject a lot of applications as well. That's why they high end is 2,000, and then their target is 1,000 to be approved. Um, and then you take a look at the number in the backlog. Now, the number in the backlog is I'm not sure what this is. Okay. So first of all, um, there was an ATIP that was done earlier this year, uh, which looked at the records from the government. Okay. And from those records, it looked like that by the end of 2024, now if you have submitted your applications in 2025, you will know that there has been virtually zero acknowledgments of receipts issued in 2025. Okay. But by the end of 2024, the number of people who received the acknowledgement of receipt. The acknowledgement of receipt is something where you get your permanent file number. Okay. It says we've received on this date, and this is your file, not the one that says the X, it starts with the X, that's a temporary file number, the one that gives you the permanent file number. By that time, so if you have received the AORs, it looks like by the end of 2024, there was around 5,460 people who have that. Okay. Now, that is not including people who are in the backlog of people who have not received the AORs. How many people did not receive AORs yet? We're not sure. Now, I don't think there would have been that many people who have submitted their applications in 2025 for a few reasons. One, the government limited the number of projects that each designated organization can have to 10. Okay, so there was only a limit there. And the project was, there were a lot of concerns about the program itself. So there wasn't as much interest as there was a few years ago. So how many? That's a question we don't know. Finally, as you can see, immigration policies are in flux. They are changing all of the time. We hope to try to persuade the government to change their policies. And the immigration levels plans do change as well. And so there's no set certainty in this situation. My estimation, depending on where people are at on the hierarchy, may be anywhere from 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, maybe, 5 years. I don't know for sure, but that's my estimation. But, you know, that's just me. That's just my estimation. Okay, so I want to talk about a few strategies. Okay, and these are strategies for permanent residence for you. First of all, uh, please continue to work on your business. And this is something that I have said to you. If you are my client, you know I've said this to you. Please continue to work on your business. If you have someone in who's a founder who has a work permit in Canada, then that person should be doing whatever they can to establish the business, set it up, do whatever you can to find partners, hire people if you can. If you have hired Canadians for your business, and the officer is going to cancel your application and refuse your application, they would be canceling the jobs of Canadians. That's a hard thing for officers to do, right? So, if you're getting some revenues, if you have create a job creation in Canada is huge. If there's any one factor that I can point to that would be like the best factor for a business is to have created jobs for Canadians. Okay. And certainly employing Canadians is great, but even if you had contractors who were working with you, that would also be good. If you have received recognition for your business with um, entities in Canada or organizations in Canada, if you have partners, you have projects that are ongoing, these are all good. Okay. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't even know if I'm going to get my permanent residence. Why should I start working on the business? My my advice to you is yes, it's a chicken and egg situation, right? But if you really, really want to get the permanent residence, then you just have to have the business so that you can show the officers that the business is established in Canada. Okay? If you don't have a work permit, find a way to work remotely and at least have the business set up as much as you possibly can. You may have to change some of your plans. Okay. You may have to, but no matter what, try to make the best of the situation. Keep evidence of your work so that when the officer actually gets to your application, we can say, hey, you know what? This is what we could do in the best of the situation. And if you can expect people to do more. Okay. So that's my advice on continuing to work on the business as if you're permanent residence, this is your way to get permanent residence is startup visas. Okay. Now, the startup visa program, the officers have said that if any of the founders obtain permanent residence through another way, another avenue, that what would happen is the application for the startup visa would be suspended. You don't get two PRs, right? So that application is suspended. That application, though, however, for the other founders, continue on. As long as the business, if they're successful in the business, etc., then the other founders are still able to get um, permanent residence through the startup visa program, even if some of the founders have obtained permanent residence in another way. Okay, you still have to maintain shares in the company and do work, etc., but it is possible. So if there are other avenues for you to get permanent residence, that might be something that you might want to think about. Okay. For example, there is a provincial nominee program that's coming out in Ontario. That's really good. It's one of the programs that I and others in the Ontario Bar Association actually proposed to the government a few years ago. And that's one to allow people who own or have bought a business in Ontario to then apply for permanent residence. If you have an open work permit, you can do that as well. And that's a program there. Express entry, they may come out with a new category-based draw this year or sometime soon for executive managers. So if you have a work permit again in Canada, this might be something to you could qualify for. There is IRCC is doing a new business program where nobody knows really what this will be. Um, I don't know. There is that possibility, although their current treatment of applicants, it really does leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth, I'm sure. Spouses, if some of you may be married to Canadians, you can get sponsored. But also, on the other hand, your spouses who have open work permits as well and who may have other skills may also, we can take a look at them as the principal applicant. It doesn't matter who gets permanent residence as a principal applicant. If one of you gets permanent residence, the whole family gets permanent residence. So we can take a look at your spouses and see if they can act as principal resident applicants for permanent residence through other ways. Okay, so that's all I have today for the my presentation. I see I have some questions here from the Q&A. And if you guys have more questions, please put them in the Q&A and I will try to answer as much as possible. Okay. I just wanted to say one thing here is that this is being recorded and it's going to be posted publicly on YouTube. So I'm not going to be answering any personal questions um, in this period of time because it's not private, okay? But if you have some general questions, please feel free to post and put it in the Q&A. Okay. So someone has asked, they have not yet received the AOR, the acknowledgement of receipt. And what are the prospects? If you have not received the AOR yet, what are the prospects of receiving it? Applications are still ongoing. They're still going to be processed. And so, yes, if the application is complete, then you will receive a acknowledgement of receipt. Someone is asking about other programs. I think we kind of talked about this. Someone wants to set up a business in Canada. I can do a whole program on entrepreneurs and other options for entrepreneurs. And if you're interested, I'll certainly invite you guys to that. But in the meantime, if any of you want to speak about it, or if you have some friends who want to learn about that, please feel free to reach out to me and I can set up a consultation session for you. Someone asked about the OIMP's new entrepreneur program. Uh, how long, if I could share some details on that. So the new entrepreneur program for OIMP is a program where basically people who have already set up the business. You prove that you've already set up the business in Ontario, and you're going to have to meet certain criteria, like you've hired certain Canadians, a number of Canadians, you have created jobs, you have etc. So the full details have not been released yet, so I don't really want to talk about the full details. It will be released sometime later this year. And when it is released, maybe we'll have a webinar then and I can let you guys know about all this. But essentially, it's for people who have already set up businesses. So you can obtain, for those of you who already have open work permits, you can do this, right? You can do whatever you want on the open work permit. For those of you who don't have work permits yet, there is something called the C11 entrepreneur work permits that we can also apply for work permits for entrepreneurs with a good business plan to get a work permit to work in Ontario. And then from there, you can set up your business and then qualify for the OIMP. Someone asked about how long it is to receive the AOR from the point of PR submission. Really, that's a unknown. Before it used to take maybe a few months, a year or so, 2 years or so, but right now that's a really unknown. And I think it really depends on where you are on the priority list. Someone has asked, when will the bar put up the request to the government to open up? So we are right now drafting submissions and hopefully putting it up in the next couple of weeks or so to the government. Again, this is just our submissions. We are going to be in the process of putting out op-ed on the newspapers as well. We're trying to, the lobbying efforts is really to try to get public support for this, and then also to put detailed recommendations to the government to try to persuade them as to, what we believe the program needs in order to be successful and to be fair as well. Again, we're not the government. We can only try to persuade the government on this. Um, so someone says one of the founders has an existing work permit, but someone else had a work permit expired. They didn't submit it for extension. So currently, the rules are if you don't have a existing work permit in hand, then you wouldn't be able to apply for another work permit. Yeah, in that situation, that you would have to work remotely. Someone asked, they received a commitment certificate in 2024. What's the situation? Well, you're waiting basically to receive your AOR. If you haven't received it, your AOR, you're waiting for it to be processed. What to expect if you have an open work permit? So it really depends and on when the government starts processing. In 2025, the government really put a hold on everything. I think they really weren't in a position, I think a lot of the officers, to understand what the policies would be. Hopefully, the government is going to start processing applications. Hopefully, they'll start finalizing applications. Um, but it's difficult for I can't really say for sure how long things are going to be. What about PR of a buy-in of a franchise? Yes, so the buy-in of the franchise, buy-in of succession planning, those are some of the things that the OIMP has said that they wanted to do. The Ontario government had said that they wanted to do with the entrepreneur program. So someone has a support letter from January and someone has a work permit in their position. Where are you on the hierarchy? It depends on who your designated organization is, as to whether or not you are first on the hierarchy or third on the hierarchy. So if someone is a principal applicant who is an essential applicant member currently in Canada, they have a work permit that's expired, and they had filed an extension, then you just wait for the extension of the work permit. Uh, if someone has applied for a closed work permit for another business, can they work on the company? Unfortunately, you can't work on your SUV company if you have a closed work permit for another company. However, you could um, do certain things that are outside of the definition of work. So, for example, you can sit on the board of directors. That is included in work that does not require a work permit. And so if you were to do the board of directors work, I mean, honestly, as I'm talking about it, it really seems like nonsense, right? How is it that you can't work on the business if you're in Canada without a work permit? Um, I think the government still has a lot to think about on this, and I'm hoping, we are hoping that the government realizes how nonsensical this whole situation is. Someone says that they had applied already for an extension before December 19th and applied for PR in 2022. Everything is still in process. If everything is still in process, then everything is still in process. Does the receipt of the AOR indicate that the immigration officer is now on the applicant's file and it will be processed? Previously, that was the case. If you received an AOR, normally your file would have been processed in around 6 months' time. But recently, what we have seen is a lot of our applications, which had been in that stage, a lot of the applications were almost finalized in 2024, all of a sudden stopped in 2025. So, and what we've seen on a lot of files where the designated organization is not on the priority list, that then their files are now being put on hold while the priority files are being processed, even though most priority files from the priority designated organizations have not been processed in 2025. Hopefully that will start in 2026. BCs are on the hierarchy. They are not secondary on the hierarchy. They are on the priority list for the hierarchy. So they're number one. If someone in your organization, in your one of your founders have a work permit and you have a VC as a designated organization, then you're priority number one. Um, PICAP, I don't think is on the priority designation. However, if it has invested 75,000 into the company, then it could be. Okay, that's it. Thank you all so much for joining me today. And again, I am very sorry to have to relate to you all this bad news about the applications, but I am hopeful, though, that the government will process these applications. And I really do encourage you to continue to work on your businesses. And here's hoping to a bright new year. It's a struggle. It's a struggle, but I'm here for you. We will try to work through it as much as possible. All right. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Take care, everyone.